Hey, welcome back to the Business of Laravel podcast with our talk to business leaders who are working in and with Laravel. My guest today is, again, the guest we had for episode 1 of this podcast, the inaugural guest. And look at that. He's got the mug. I guess that's the first time we've had a chance for this because you're our first repeat. Oh, I love that. Wow, you really did that. Ian's Landsman, Ian Landsman, the godfather of Laravel. When we first had you on, actually, sorry, Ian, hi. Thanks for coming on.
Hello. No problem. It's always fun to be here.
That's great having you. So when we first had you on, we were doing the classic business of Laravel, and that's what we've done for every guest up until now. It's just like, tell me about your backstory and tell about your business and how is your business connected to Laravel. But we were talking just a couple days ago, and I said, hey, I am catching up on your wonderful podcast, Mostly Technical. If you don't listen to it, y'all, I would highly recommend checking out Mostly Technical. It's one of the most fun, casual friends with like talking about tech, but talking about life. Like I feel like it's just buddy. It's not buddy comedy, but it's got all those good bits. It's a great podcast. And I was like, I'm catching on your podcast since the summer. And I heard this episode where you talked about this new idea that you have, Outro.fm. And I was like, I think I'm the target market for this. Are you still working on this? And you were like, you know what? Let's just talk about the podcast. So I know less than any of the Mostly Technical regular listeners, and yet I think I'm your perfect target audience. So I wanted to see, would you just kind of give a pitch for us for what is this project? What motivated you going to it? Where is it right now? And of course, we can talk about Laravel and AI in a bit. But first of all, just what is this? What are we working on?
Yeah. So, I've had my main product for 20 years, a help desk software application called HelpSpot. And, every 5 years or so, I kind of get the itch of like, gotta do something different. It's like HelpSpot's paying the bills and it's great and I love it.
Yeah.
But, it's like customers just want us to ship incremental improvements and all those things. So that's what we do. Yeah. But sometimes you just want to, I'm in the Laravel community. There's all these great toys we get.
Yep.
And all the new things, and it's like, I can't always utilize those. So I had this idea in my head I was going back and forth with for a while, and it's turned into Outro. And it's basically a tool to like organize and monetize your podcast. So to me, that's like the core pitch of it. And it really started primarily from the organization. So I've done Mostly Technical with Aaron Francis now for almost 100 episodes. And I had a podcast before that for a couple 100-something episodes. And, I think we do what a lot of people do, which is like, well, we have Trello or we have Google Docs. And then you're kind of doing that. And then Mostly Technical, we started selling sponsorships, which I did for the last podcast too. And it's like, okay, like I got to wire that stuff up and like get Stripe and build a page and do a thing. Okay, you do that. And then, kind of want to email people, so I got to wire that up and whatever. We haven't even done that for Mostly Technical. So you end up with like all this amalgamation of like 6 tools, and they all are generic business tools. None of them know it's for a podcast or anything like that. And so, it just felt like, I don't know, there's something there. It's like I want a tool that first off lets me organize every episode. So it's like, these are the segments we're going to have. These are the questions for the guest. These are the topics we're going to cover. These are, if, on a multi-host environment, it's like who's doing each topic or who's involved. If there's multiple hosts, like all those things. Yeah. You can imagine, like, I just listened to a podcast this morning where like they were discussing something and they wanted to reference what they said a few episodes ago. And they didn't have any way to do that. It's like Outro will have your full transcript and you can search for that point 2 episodes ago where you said something, you want to reference it. So all that type of like production elements, and then the monetization elements, so like memberships, marketing tools, so primarily like email and memberships and things like that, and then selling sponsorships. That's kind of the thrust of it. So
I love this.
Okay.
I'm so excited. And I hope that is exciting, not just because, that I love Ian Landsman and I want him to succeed, but hopefully because I'm your target audience. I just want to kind of like set the framework for those who haven't been podcasting for a long time. When we first started podcasting, there was 1, maybe 2 hosts out there, and a lot of people, we would just kind of make our own XML feeds. I remember building Expression Engine templates
Yeah.
that would point to hosted MP3s or whatever on my local server. And every time we pushed up a new one, we would just add an entry into the expression database that would then push it up there. And so the idea of like podcast hosting, man, when Simplecast first came out, I was like, this is revolutionary and democratizes the process of podcast creation. And then more and more tools have come out. You mentioned in your episode of Mostly Technical, things like Riverside, which we're using right now, or Streamlabs. These tools make it easier to also create your podcast and stuff like that. So I am all for, even though like there's definitely a meme on the internet of like less, men should have just a podcast microphone in their hands saying stupid stuff out in the internet. I still think the democratization of podcast creation not be just the domain of highly technical people or people who can pay a lot of money to do things is a valuable thing. And, Transistor has really, I think like our friend Justin Jackson has led the way in talking about how that's a valuable thing and creating content and tools that makes it easier for more people to get into podcasting today. But you start a podcast, and one of the reasons in my experience why you don't continue with the podcast is the friction. And they got rid of the hosting friction. Once you have an MP3, Transistor makes it extremely easy, or Simplecast, whatever else, extremely easy to get the content out there. But what about what happens before the MP3, right? And I have often been asked by people, they say, how do you run a company and be a present father and write a book and put out YouTubes and also do 2 or 3 podcasts at a time? And I'm like, virtual assistants. It's literally the only way to do it. It's virtual assistants and being a process person. I love coming up with a process, defining the process, and then getting, it to happen in a regular, preferably without me involved. And so what it involves is a virtual assistant. And let's see, I've got Trello for sure. I've got BusyCal. I've got Riverside. I've got Simplecast. We at one point were using a transcription service. We've got, if I didn't say it, we've got Trello for sure. And each of it is, first of all, cobbled together. Second of all, if somebody else were to come along, it would take me half an hour to walk through my processes and my tooling. And third of all, there's a lot of just very arbitrary stuff in there. Like I built a structure for what the template card is for an episode. But there's the episode before I've invited the person, where there's a lot of manual stuff where I'm using email here and Twitter here and whatever else here. And then there's also the template card for the actual episode. And there's just all these automated processes forming a tool that is not intended for podcasting to do podcasting things, right? So when you say this idea of like, it's going to do everything Trello does, but it's going to be podcasting specific, I'm like, thank God. It's going to hook that Trello card into the email that was sent out to invite them. I'm like, oh my gosh, like the amount of time this is going to save my VA. And I don't feel bad because I will give her plenty of other work elsewhere, especially across multiple podcasts. Once I have a system and I have the way I want it to work, like I'm super, super, super excited about that. So,
dude,
all that said,
you're my target audience.
That's what I'm saying. Like I'm your guy. So one of the first questions I want to ask, because I think this is probably going to be a first question on a lot of folks' minds, is how do you do market research and analysis when you're creating a category here, right? Because and you mentioned this again briefly in that first episode. Y'all, I will link the first episode, and I'm sure he's talking about 100 other episodes I haven't listened to yet. In that first episode, you mentioned you're breaking one of the cardinal rules of bootstrapping, where you're saying, hey, I'm trying to carve out a new market versus working in a competitive market. And I'm super curious about that. What does it look like for you to make a decision to pour time and money and effort into a thing without knowing how large the addressable target market is or what their willingness to pay money for it's going to look like? Are you just kind of stepping out on faith, or
we're on a lot of faith here, man. We're on a lot of faith. I'm not saying anybody should be copying me on this one. We're definitely breaking some of the rules. Nothing's established here. So it's not going to do the hosting part, as you kind of touched on. So it's not like trying to be a host, which is definitely an established part of the ecosystem, right? Like could do hosting, right? That would be an established thing. It's not hosting.
I'm gonna touch that.
And it's not the production in terms of like recording, like Riverside and those things. So it's definitely like a new thing. But again, everybody's having to cobble it together, right? So I know that there's a need, right? Like, because every well-established podcaster, just like yourself, has the same exact story. Like I've created these processes and organization that lets me actually do this, right? And so part of this for me is like, and so in terms of the research, like I definitely did some research. Me and ChatGPT went down the rabbit hole of like how many podcasts are there, right? And like all those kind of things. And like there's not as many as you would like. It's like coming from help desk software, which is like, oh, every single company on earth uses this kind of software, right? Like that's the addressable market is everyone. This is from a B2B perspective anyway. This is definitely not quite that. So it's going to be it's a little broader even in that sense because it's like established podcasters. It's like for everyone, but it's still not that many people. But it's like Joe Rogan, right? Like a King of the Hill. Like you could use this to organize a Joe Rogan episode, all the way down to like, and that's also a very different need, like because they're already organized on some level, right? And they already have sponsorship processes and all this stuff, right? And then you go all the way down to like person who's just starting a podcast, and this is more where I primarily am thinking about at this point because
Okay.
to me, I want to get people podcasting, right? And
Okay.
and more importantly, keep them podcasting. And I feel like the essential part of that is what you described, right? You need this organizational structure to do it effectively over years.
Yeah.
But the
Or you just
thing
burn
is,
out.
like, so many people have to figure that out for themselves. And of course, we're technical. So yeah, you can create a connector between two apps and like you can do all these things if you have to, and you're comfortable with the base set of tools and all those things. But none of those tools are guiding you. Like when you go into Trello, you know what Trello is, you know how it works, and you know how to use the API if you need to and whatever. But if you're just a regular person, you're like, okay, well, here's people say they use Trello. And then I go in there and it's like,
it's a blank
there's
screen.
nothing in
Now
there.
what?
Like, there's nothing in there, right? Okay, so I guess I'll put some cards in here, but then like you get into pre and post production. Like Outro has pre and post production to-dos. So it's like exactly what you're saying. It's like, these are the things I do before an episode. These are the emails that go out and it can send those emails. And like post production, I can have to-dos for the VA, or if you have producers or you have an editor or whatever, like there could be steps in that. And it can understand what like the thing I hit with Trello, and maybe there's probably some kind of way to even do this in Trello that I haven't even done, which is like every episode has like an intro and an outro and might have production steps. So, you know, since it understands the concept of an episode, it can like pre-populate those things. Again, I'm sure there's some Trello way to do that. I've never even done that myself. I just wanted, like, in terms of a podcast, it's like, this is an episode. What should it have? Outro gives you those things an episode should have, and then lets you add all the custom segments and ad reads and whatever else you need for each, you know, episode custom in that sense. So, yeah, but in terms of the business aspect, you know, I'm quite back and forth on it. I think to me, it's like the baseline is the organizational part, which will probably be free, and then keeping people going and helping them build their podcast to me is like where the value is going to be in terms of. I think there's a ton of value in organizing them, but I don't know if people want to pay for that. I don't know if enough people want to pay for that, right? Because it's like, well, I can use Trello for free, I use Google Docs for free, and whatever. So I feel like, okay, this is going to be a better way to organize. Come on in here for free and organize, right? And then we can layer on. Like, you want members. That's like, to me, one of the hardest things with podcasting to me is even when your show gets bigger, like you actually don't get that much feedback back. Like, it's hard to get that feedback back. It's not like a central way to even do it. It's like maybe you get a YouTube comment if you're on YouTube, or maybe somebody randomly sends you something on social media. If you push, you'll get emails if you really let people know about that. But it's all a little haphazard. So I feel like that whole part of it is part of the monetization aspect to me, of like a mailbag, so you can really organize your inbound stuff. But more importantly, the membership stuff, have members, email, newsletters, all that kind of connection where you can build those connections and start to build the monetization. Because again, that's motivating too, right? The more you can get people towards somehow making money on their podcast, even if it's not a ton of money.
It's just
at first. It's still like motivating and keeps you going versus feeling like you're alone and you're talking into the ether and all that stuff. So
there's so many things you said that I want to respond to. I should have been taking notes, but I was just like, I was locked in. So one of them is I really appreciate the idea of these kind of repeating segments, because everyone who listens to this podcast knows I screw up my intro almost every single time because I don't remember to have it in front of me because I don't have the card, but you know, and like I'll learn, like eventually I'll be like, okay, VA, like every time I got a new episode, I should go to the board on Trello and it should say the person's name and the full, but it doesn't always happen, or I don't even remember to open the freaking thing. So yes, I'm very, very big fan of that. I do want to talk a little bit about like what's the addressable market from the whole way from the intro to the Joe Rogan. You know, kind of touched on that a little bit. But I also want to just name that I have 2 active podcasts and 2 no longer active podcasts. I haven't taken an ad for any of them on purpose, but never once have I even really considered building a community around them at the level you're talking about, a viable option. So I'm even like, I'm your target market in part because you're replacing tooling that I built, and in part because you're exposing something that I don't even have.
Yep.
The idea, people will often say, your email list is one of your most valuable tools that you have. And I was like, well, I've got thousands and thousands of people who regularly listen to these podcasts and don't have the email address of anybody unless they
Yep.
specifically hunted down my email address, send me an email and said, thank you for the podcast. And usually that's only because they signed up for my newsletter, which most podcasts aren't doing, and happen
Right.
to also listen to the podcast. So the idea of having an email list of people, or even like a community forum or some other thing like that, or the ability for them to become Patreon sponsors without me having to learn yet another tool, and having
Yep.
a subversion of the podcast for the, this is really like, this
Yeah.
podcast shouldn't just be about me being excited, but I'm also
No, it
very
should be. I like
excited
that.
about
That's better.
this.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Um,
Patreon is like the big competitor, I would say. In
yeah.
my
Mhm.
mind, like Patreon is the competition. It's
Mhm.
like Patreon, but it understands your podcast and gives you all these other podcasting things. It's super focused on podcasts, whereas obviously Patreon is
Yeah.
like OnlyFans competition and
Yeah.
random vloggers and like it's anything. It's generic, which it's
Yeah.
huge and it's great and that's awesome.
Yeah.
But like it can't do everything I feel like we'll be able to do by knowing this is really specifically for podcasts.
So you mentioned kind of like, you're like, there's the whole range, which is the whole way from I just started my first podcast in the first point, all the way up to I'm Joe Rogan and I already have an existing system. I have built SaaS in the past. I've built a few, but one is coming to mind where it was for people who don't do fundraising. And I very specifically said there's tools out there that serve full-time professional fundraisers, and this is not for them. I'm not a
Right.
full-time professional fundraiser, but there's also people who have to do fundraising part-time as a part of their job, and they're not trained in it, and they're not experienced in it, and they have some other day job, and this is the tool to make them better at fundraising. And,
Mhm.
I'm wondering, is this the tool for people who aren't professional podcasters, that aren't Joe Rogans, and it gets you from start up until maybe me, right? Like I maybe can consider a part of my day job, but it's still really just a very expensive side hobby at this point.
Right.
Or do you think you're getting the whole way up to the Joe Rogans as well eventually?
No, I wanna go all the way. I want the whole
Okay.
thing. I definitely whether or not we get all the way to, like, Joe Rogan, I don't know, but I definitely wanna go past where we're talking about you being, because I want it to be for people who definitely make a full-time living on podcasting.
Yeah,
Like,
cool.
whether
Cool,
you
cool.
make hundreds of millions of dollars, like, that
Right,
even starts to
yeah.
get into, like, a different sort of right? It's like big enterprise at that point, right? So
Mhm,
who
yeah.
knows? That's got its own rules kind of. But
Yeah.
definitely want it to be that, and I think it can be, 'cause, like, I think where we come in initially is more, it's gonna be harder to break into very established shows because they already have MailChimp and whatever they're
Yeah.
using for sponsors. Like, they've already built their
They're gonna
systems.
switch.
Are they
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
move it over? Like, again, I think there's probably benefits especially once we have it all cooking for
Yeah.
them to move over, but at the same time, that's always a big lift to ask people to move everything, right? So, like,
Yeah.
to me, it's more about the early focus for me is those smaller and earlier podcasts, because it's like, then they become big podcasts. They are growing with
I'm big
Outro,
with you.
right?
That's cool.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they're coming up with
Mhm.
us. So one thing I did, this is that's on the business front of this. This was a very specific decision, and I've really only kind of recently come to it because there is like two paths. I think there is the like it's just really about the organization and forget
Yeah.
the membership and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And it is then a tool for like, you are established podcast. You have 4 hosts and 3 producers, and it's a big freaking mess. You're across all
Yeah.
these tools, right? It's a disaster. This is going to fix all that for you. And then it's just like an enterprise sales process, essentially, of like,
Yeah.
you're already making tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. I'm selling you a tool at at $300 a month
Yeah.
for this solution to your problems, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that would have been one way to go, but I think it's harder. Definitely. It's also like, I'm not as interested in that path, honestly, of like
Got it.
sort of just another effectively B2B tool kind of thing. And I think it's a much smaller market. There's only so many podcasts that are big enough to want to pay $300 a month for
Yeah.
this kind of solution. So now, like, I have to get a pretty high percentage of that market to make that all work.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's like, hey, anybody with a podcast is a potential customer. And once they start getting a few people on the email list and they start getting a few members and we're, getting our fee for those tools, like now we can have thousands of podcasts maybe that have, members from a handful of members up to 10,000 members. And we're making reasonable money there in that range. So
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of the way I was approaching it.
Well, that makes sense to me as well because, if I were to think about some of those things, one of the things that would keep me from building some of that membership stuff is I would, first of all, like you said, have to set up 3 or 4 different tools. I'd have to know how to use those tools extremely well. But even if I knew how to use all of them, MailChimp alone, if I've got $4,000 or $5,000, four or 5,000 regular MailChimp recipients, I think it's over $100 a month, right? Just
Right.
on MailChimp alone, let alone all the other tooling you're talking about.
Right.
And Trello is free off the bat, but you could get to a point, with a certain number of team members, a certain number of boards where Trello isn't free anymore either.
Yeah. And that's sort of the economic analysis I've done is that like, that to me is also where I plan on making money in Outro. That like, if you
Yeah.
have 4,000 subscribers, it's probably going to be $100 a month, but
Yeah.
that's what 4,000 subscribers is worth. And
Yeah.
you're going to be utilizing them more. Like the people just on your mailing list right now that it sounds like maybe not even fully effectively utilizing, or they're not, it's not even a specific mail list for the show potentially either, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So can we help you optimize that? Obviously, we can be sending stuff when new shows come out, but even
Yeah.
all kinds of things around that, right? Like, so there's just a lot that I feel like can be done in their polls or whatever, community things, and just keeping that feedback loop in there. Yeah. And then I think then the value over time is like, yes, maybe it ends up costing similar to what you were paying MailChimp, but yes, you're not paying for all those other tools that you are
Yeah.
also now paying for. Like sort of phase 2, I don't know, we'll get to this phase 1, but phase 2, I'd like to do like replace Buffer, like do your social media auto posting and all those things, right? And like,
That's cool.
this is more like a 1.5, but all kinds of guest management aspects, like your shows, like all guests, right? So like to be able to invite the guest, have that whole calendar selection.
Calendly, yeah.
Calendly, replace Calendly, like all those kind of things, have all that integrated. And obviously, like you can just put the guest on the show and blah, blah, blah. So it's all much more organized and integrated. But yeah. So I think it's a combination of like those things there.
So I said busy Cal earlier, and I meant Calendly for anybody who's been correcting me in their head this whole time. But if I run an agency, right, and so one of my main things that I do at my job is talk to people who have an idea for an app and try to talk them into what is more reasonable for them to do. Because what I don't want to do is have you pay us money to build something that we don't actually think is the best thing for you, right? And so when it's founders, the number of times I've had a founder come and say, I want to build an app and it's going to replace these 17 things and I want it, to work in 6 months. And I'm like, so you're saying we need to replace this app, this app, this app, this app, this app. And so I'm like, Ian, we're talking Trello, MailChip, sponsorships, Calendly, all these kind of things. But obviously you know that. And I know that, again, I have not caught up in the podcast, but people at Titan talk about just kind of like, oh, Ian talked about this in the podcast enough that I know. I know that it's you and it's a pretty hefty AI development workflow working on this. Can you talk to us a little bit about A, the decision to build an app that is the everything app, right?
Right.
And B, how are you doing that in a way that doesn't give your bootstrapper heart just a heart attack of like, I can't believe I'm choosing to do so many freaking things at once?
Yeah, man, it's hard. So I guess on terms of the decision, I just felt like, to me, this is the app. If it's like, if it's just replacing Trello or whatever, I feel like it's maybe in the end that will have been, that's what I should have done. Who knows? I don't know the answer. But to me, it feels like, I don't know if that's enough value. I feel like it has to be bigger than that. It has to be more like, this is where you go to really organize the business of your podcast. Like everything from producing it to selling it and all those things. Like this is where that happens. Like this is where you can sell your sponsorships. This is where you can make money on members. This is where you go in here every time you record an episode. Like this is the command center of your podcast. And I feel like anything less than that, so it doesn't really work.
Doesn't make sense.
And then so that then implies it has to do all that stuff. So I think, my take on that initially is like, definitely there'll be like phases. It's not going to try to do everything all at once, but it'll definitely have like the episode organization kind of stuff. It'll definitely have the membership stuff. It's certainly going to be the shaved down version of all those tools. It's not going to attempt to do everything MailChimp does, right? Because that would be crazy. So again, this is where it also lines up to me as more like, hey, this is going to be kind of a light solution at first. So people earlier in the process make more sense because it's people who don't need, give me A/B testing on these member emails I send, right? Like, so it's not going to have A/B testing on your member emails, but that's okay because you only have 100 subscribers. You don't need A/B testing, right? So, right? So that's okay. And then
Yeah.
like, hey, but 3 years from now, when we have, customers who have 100,000
Yeah.
members, right? Then it's like, well, okay, they're asking us for A/B testing, and then that kind of
Yeah.
makes sense. And then we'll build those features and whatever we go from there. So the scope, trying to keep the scope, I'm trying to like let myself go broad with the scope in terms of
Yeah.
accepting more types of things, which is sort of weird, but then not let it go too deep on any of them, at least phase one, as sort of
Yeah.
my philosophical plan. And then, yeah, I've definitely integrated a lot of the AI stuff. I mean, I'll talk about that in 1 second, but I will say, it's hard as Userscape's been bootstrapped the whole time. We don't have a big team.
Yeah.
Um, and it's also like we're doing a bunch of stuff in HelpSpot. Of course, like these things overlap. Like we're doing this whole big
Yeah.
redesign of HelpSpot and like we're redoing the marketing site and all this stuff. So like I actually haven't even worked on Outro in like 3 weeks, like because it's
Yeah.
just been 3 weeks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even with
It's too
the
busy.
AI and all this stuff, I
Yeah.
just haven't literally had time to even sit down with the AI and do anything. So
Yeah.
that's how it goes sometimes. You got kids, it's summer,
Yeah.
all the stuff there. You know how it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. I do.
Yeah, so I'm excited about the fall, and I think it'll be a little more normal, back to kind of normal schedule. But yeah, and the AI is great. I think my plan is a little bit multifold in this part too, because I think the AI is super good at like getting you rolling and pushing you through roadblocks and things like that. So like I've definitely gotten way farther than I could have gotten if I was just sitting down coding. Because the thing is, I always hit roadblocks, and then something comes up because I'm still running the company and stuff, and then
Yeah.
you get distracted
Gotta
over
disappear.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the day's over, and then you didn't even finish the thing you started in the morning, right? So the AI has been really good for both like plowing through when I just don't know how to do something, or iterating fast on different options, and then being totally comfortable scrapping the bad options because whatever, I spent 10 minutes with AI doing it and I don't care, right? Um, but also sometimes where you can just let it go on its own. It's like, okay, it's gonna go build this thing. I spec'd it out in detail. It's gonna go do it. Now I can just go work on the other businessy stuff I have to do. So that part's really great. I think, as it gets deeper and more complicated, we'll see. I feel like the cracks show up a little bit more as the app gets
Yeah.
more complex. And
Yeah.
I could see bringing on some help, whether it's the internal devs we have who are really super busy, so I don't know, or maybe having
Yeah.
somebody outside come in and help on some stuff there. So I do think we'll reach the point where I'll need some other dev help, but not quite there yet.
Okay. So, I have been historically pretty critical of AI for development workflows. And
Yeah.
one of my friends, Phil Zangle, was like, Matt, you can't really be someone who's trying to be like a thought leader in the world being critical when you have not practically, actively used it on the
Mm,
project. And I was like,
yeah.
okay, I hear you. So I'm building this internal tool that we're using as a part of our sales and marketing team, and I'm choosing to use AI for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
that makes me one of the more inexperienced AI developers out there. I'm going to be very transparent about it. I do talk to my whole team about it, right? So I'm getting their thoughts as well. And
Yep.
they point up with my experiences, which is that the average person's usage of AI, which is not yours, and that's why I want to talk about yours a little bit. The average
Yeah.
person's usage of AI, if you are an expert in the field, so if you are an expert in Laravel and you have Claude or you've got Cursor or something like that, it will be faster at some things, but you often spend as much time or more reviewing the code than you would have just writing the thing in the first place. So similar to you, I'm a business owner I have 2 minutes to code here and there. So I'm like,
Right.
great, this is this really ideal scenario where I look at the app, think of something it needs, I tell Claude to do it, and then I go on 6 hours of calls, and then I come
Right.
back off a call and I go look at Claude's work, and I'm like, no, not quite right. Make this change, write a test for it, run the tests. Hey, I told you to run the test in Pest. Why are you not doing PHP unit, right? It goes and does the thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I come back or whatever. And that feels like the dream until I'm ready to actually merge all that stuff. And then I end spending 2 hours reviewing the code because it's written so poorly in a lot of ways that I have to rewrite the whole thing in order for it to get to the point where I actually want it to be. I'm just kind of like, I don't know if it would have been any better to just write it myself and not have to do this whole back and forth. So it's weird because it gives me these moments where it feels like, oh my gosh, this is so great. But the
Right.
actual practical end result isn't. And I've kind of read some articles, I'll link one in the show notes, where people said like, all this whole AI makes us X% faster is self-reported. None of it is actually tested. None of these articles that are talking about how much faster AI makes developers actually use any practical metrics. They're literally just self-reporting. And I'm like, so it's completely open to our delusions of, I
Right.
think it's making me faster, but it's
Yeah.
not. I'm not saying Ian Landsman is not susceptible to those same delusions, but I also
Sure.
trust you a lot. You're extremely practical. You're extremely experienced,
Right.
and you have a AI workflow that is what nobody else I know has. So whether or not you will land on the I think AI is the best in the world camp a year from now, you are
Right.
doing some really creative stuff. So do you feel like you could give us the TLDR of your whole, I've got multi different clods and one of them is writing specs. And again, I only know that this exists. I don't actually know
Yeah.
it. Is that something you could share with us?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, here's yeah, so I think big picture, but then I'll go into the detail of how I specifically work. But I think I have a little advantage here, I guess, in the sense of like I don't feel like I'm a very good programmer. Like I feel like I'm a
Hmm.
super generalist. And that's how I've always been. Like I learned the program basically building HelpSpot. I had like the JavaScript Bible book on my lap as I'm learning it and whatever. And I've always been a programmer who's also responsible for running this business. I've never
Hmm.
been a professional programmer where my
Got it.
job
Yeah.
was to program and not, I had no other responsibilities. Like I was just a programmer.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I've always been this like I was just I did some stuff at a previous job now a million years ago where I was doing some programming, but I still had all these other responsibilities. And then I had this company where I'm running the company and doing the support and selling and programming, right? So, so I think it's not, I'm not the world's worst programmer, but I'm not like super fast inherently with my programming. I'm not doing it that often that like every Laravel magic trick is right in my head. So,
Yeah.
I'm off in the docks, like wandering around
Yeah.
looking for a thing I think I know it might do, right? It's like
Yeah.
I'm having to do all that stuff. So for me, and I could be totally delusional, but I do feel like it makes me significantly faster. And part of it is just that it knows, the function names and whatever. It can do those things. But the other part is just I would also tend to get kind of in like a perfectionist kind of mindset in my more I will say this, like in HelpSpot, I didn't have that. When I was building HelpSpot, I was like, I quit my job in order to do this. I have
Yeah.
to build this. It must get out. Like,
I have to
I
ship.
can't be precious.
Yeah.
I must ship.
Uh-huh.
Like, okay, this code is crappy in this spot. That's unfortunate, but the reality is like it spits out the right thing at the end, and that's going to have to be good enough for now
Yeah.
because like otherwise I got to go get a job again in a couple
Yeah.
months if this thing doesn't ship, right? So now ever since then, I haven't had that kind of motivation because it's like
Hmm.
I can build side projects, I can do whatever, and I can be precious with them because I don't have that need necessarily to
Uh-huh.
ship to survive. And I think it's like hurt those products honestly.
Hmm.
And so now it's nice because it's like I can push through that stuff. It's like, oh, I'm not even the one who wrote this, right? I didn't
Yeah.
even write it. So like, so where you're looking at the code being like, oh man, it's gonna take me hours to like go through it. I'm
Uh-huh.
like, this
You're like,
works.
commit.
Yeah, I'm like, commit. Like, I mean, I'm not letting it do crazy shit. I'm definitely
Uh-huh.
reviewing it.
Uh-huh.
Um, then I'll talk about that in my workflow. So I'm definitely reviewing it, but I'm not, I'm not going through it with a fine tooth comb. I'm letting
Yeah.
it go and like being like, we're going to get to the working version of this thing and it's going to
Yeah.
ship. And you know what? We can double back
Yeah.
and clean stuff up. I've already done that a few times with a couple passes back through to, you know, the biggest problem for me is not that it ever does any one thing wrong. It's that it does one thing one way, and then 2 weeks later you have to build something else, and it's done it like a slightly different way, the kind of behind
Yeah.
the scenes part of it. And you're like, well, now, like when I'm working through this, it's like
Yeah.
this little mismatch of like maybe how it named a component compared to a previous time or whatever, just how it structured things. And you're like, I don't love that. So whatever, how about go back through and be like, well, let's fix this to match
Yeah.
in one direction or the other and stuff like that. But yeah, I think just being able to plow through and be like, wow, I built this feature's built, and I can move on to the next thing, build the next feature, go through, being able to scrap stuff that's bad, like all that stuff. I think again, like that's a part where in the past, oh, I took a week and built this thing and it sucked,
Yeah.
and now that's like now I don't work for a month on the project because it's like
Yeah.
whatever. It's like annoying, and I have to
It's
rebuild. I
bumming
have to
you
go
out.
back and build
Yeah.
the thing
Uh-huh.
again. I just built, but in a different way, and blah blah. Blah. So now, like, I don't ever feel that pain ever. It's like okay, like scrap it, do it again.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So now, in terms of my specific flow, yeah, I do have. I mean, there's a couple different ways to do it, but the thing that's worked best for me is to always create a spec and then have it build from the spec. And so what I'll
Okay.
do is if you're using Claude Code, you can have different like slash commands, or now they have different agents, they call them. So a couple different ways even to do this. But so I'll have a slash command that's like the planner. And then it's kind of, got the base prompt of it is like about being a Laravel architect and the
Oh, okay.
Livewire and like all this stuff, right? And what it's going to do, it's going to take the input and it's going to help me plan it. It's going to write it to a markdown file. And so that's kind of the core is like, I'll be like, here's the feature. I'll write it up pretty good. I'll give it to the planner. The planner looks through the code base and it's like, okay, this means we have to like create these files and edit these functions and blah, 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 whatever it has to do. But it does a really detailed plan and like way more detailed than I would ever write in a million years, even for like a human. Again, this is like
Yeah.
my style. I don't know. In Titan, you guys do awesome spec docs
No,
because
we're
it's like a consultancy,
pretty. We
but
keep it pretty
a little
simple.
looser.
So,
Okay, so
yeah.
so
Yeah.
a much more, I would say, in-depth document than I would ever produce myself. Then I edit that document directly.
Mm,
So I read it, see what it did, you know, kind of especially at the higher level of like, is this actually what I told it to do?
yeah.
Is there any subtle things where it's got it wrong, or sometimes it still gets confused about stuff like thinking it's working in production, for example. And so it's
Mhm.
like, well, here's a migration strategy. I'm like, we don't need it. Like, so I just
Yeah.
erase everything about migration strategy because there's no
Yeah.
migration. Like it doesn't exist yet, right? So there's stuff like that creeps in there. So just make sure like what I'm feeding it back in that the spec is like really tight and good. And then I have another agent that's the developer. Base prompt is like, you're a Laravel developer, blah, blah. This is how you write tests. Here's some
Yeah.
examples, blah, blah. And then I feed it the plan. I'm like, okay, execute this plan. And then
Okay.
it goes off and it builds it. And then the final step usually is like, I just use GitHub desktop and I'll just look at the changes in there
Yeah.
and review the code, see if it makes sense. And then obviously I'll check in the UI and run the tests and all that stuff. And that's it. And
That's it.
it goes
Okay.
pretty quick. Yeah, I've liked it. Definitely not perfect. Definitely because it lets you move fast. You can now move fast in the wrong direction. So I've had
Yeah.
that happen a couple times where I'm like, oh, I built a whole big feature. Like this feature's kind of stupid. Like I don't know. I don't know if I should have built this big feature.
That's
So
funny.
yeah, there's some stuff like
Okay.
that. But yeah,
Um,
that's how I do it.
That's really cool. And I know this podcast is not about Ian's AI strategy, but I did want to kind of just get that out there. One of the reasons I wanted to ask about that is I'm curious for you, do you think you would take on this project if you did not have AI for help? Would you just do it and it would just go slower? Would you do it and would you pay for help? Is this a
Yeah.
foundational part of you even choosing to take it on in the first place?
So I definitely think with my personality and just as I've seen in the past, like I think I would do it.
Okay.
But I don't think it would get done. So I think that's the
Noted.
differentiator. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I would do it. But then the reality of like being pulled back into our main business stuff all the time would just be ever present there. And eventually you're like, well, I'm on like a year of this, still
Yeah.
not done. Because it is like we talked about, fairly ambitious. Like it's not just
Yeah.
a little to-do app that's got a little twist
Ship
to
it
it.
a couple months. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of got a lot going on. And so it could easily just stretch out for a very long period of time, which hey, it's already stretched out a little bit of a long period of
I
time.
mean,
But
yeah.
not crazy long, yeah, a couple months or
Yeah.
whatever it's been. But yeah, so that we'll see if I actually ship it. I believe I will, but
I hope
you
you
never
do.
know. But yeah, I think that's kind of the thing. I think I would want to do it and I would start doing it, but would it get done? I think would either be
Yeah.
wouldn't happen or it would have to happen a different way. Like right
Yeah.
from the beginning, I'm hiring a developer and like that whole path of like
Yeah.
which I mean obviously is how it's been done in the past, so
Yeah.
is workable. But then that's a budget item, and I gotta, well, do I want to spend $100,000 on this idea? Like, is it that good of an idea? I don't even know if I like it yet, and whatever. It's like
Yeah.
again, like the AI is so good because it's like I know I like it and I feel like it's a good idea because I built it enough to
Yeah.
know that like, oh, I wish I could use this myself for my podcast. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so I'm far enough along where like now I'm okay spending money on it actually. And it's like, so we have the designers doing a fancy logo and all this stuff because it's like I'm
Yeah.
more
You
comfortable
validated
that
it
it's an
without the
investment.
cost.
Yes. Yeah,
And
exactly.
a lot of people are so worried about the future of programmers and consultants as a result of programming, as a result
Yeah.
of AI. And I'm not saying there's no threat at all, but what I heard you say was there's an app that never would have gone to production if I was building it myself. I may have hired a contractor to do it, but I might not have had the money for that. And now that I've used AI to build it, there's a very good chance that if it does well, I will then hire programming help to. So I'm like, in the end,
Yes.
we've got one more app out in the world with the potential that if it makes money, we're going to hire a program to work on the thing anyway. It's not like you're like,
Right.
AI is going to run this thing forever, right? So I'm
Right.
just like, this is just another example to me where I'm like, AI has moved things around a little bit, but I'm not
Yeah.
worried that now I'm out of a job because Ian's using AI for this thing. So it's kind of fun hearing you talk about it that way.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I totally agree. I don't think it's going to do that. I don't know. Again, do they invent totally self-aware AI that's like an actual human tomorrow? Fine, but then I feel like there's bigger problems than your
yes.
job as a developer, right? So who knows? That the
Yeah.
world's going to be in chaos. But if that doesn't happen, which I feel like it's probably not going to anytime soon, yeah, I just feel like you still need the human to manage it. Like maybe the job changes and there's more. You have to maybe understand more of what you're building and why you're building it,
Hmm.
and more of the business reasoning behind things and things like that. But at the end of the day, there's so much bad software out there, and then and there's so many things that have no software at all. It's like the
Yeah.
combination of software that's terrible and software that doesn't exist that should exist is like humongous
Yeah.
amount of software there. So you're just gonna
Yep.
need a lot of people and a lot of AI to, I mean, the reason it doesn't exist is because it hasn't been financially feasible with the
Hmm.
number of developers that exist to build all that software and the money
Yeah.
behind it. But now it's like, well, now in these smaller niches, you don't need as much money. So that works out. In bigger areas, you could put even more resources towards it. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's going to just expand, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Totally. I had another question for you, and that was such a great point that I got totally
Oh
distracted.
no,
That's okay.
sorry.
No, it's don't apologize. It's a great point. I really appreciate that.
Was it about the
So
worry of AI? Okay.
there is that, but this is the Business of Laravel podcast, and we're
Mm,
talking about an app that you're building, in Laravel. But I am curious, as you thought about, you kind of took a CTO role here, right? We're often talking to CTOs and CEOs and founders. As the CTO of Outro, uh, how did you approach making the technical decisions around what front end were you using, and what sort of architectural strategies were you using, and what does your hosting look like? Like, what did you choose, and what guided your choices there, especially as this app exists, and you have so much experience knowing things in the Laravel community? I know you say you don't stay on top of everything, but I know that you have thoughts about React versus Livewire versus whatever else. So,
yeah.
what motivated your decisions in kind of like the big architectural pieces?
Yeah. So I'm a total just, unless you have a very strong reason, I'm just going to stick with what I know for the most part.
Hmm. Yeah,
Unless it's like, oh yeah, the thing I know just literally can't do what I need done, then fine. But
yeah,
what we're talking about here, Outro is a very, it's pretty cruddy sort of app. It's not a lot of
yeah,
magic on that front. There's going to be some AI stuff in it and whatever, some cool sprinkling magic dust on things, but it's not at the end of the day, going to need to scale to a billion users or all
right.
this kind of stuff, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, so it's Laravel. I'm a Livewire guy, so
love it.
using Livewire. I did a couple years ago take some time to learn sort of React. I mean, I'm definitely no expert. I did not care for it at all, so React was not for me.
Uh huh.
Um, yeah, so Livewire, Laravel. I'm like, great. Laravel Cloud exists now. Going to go on Laravel
Yeah,
Cloud, right? So that's kind of my stack. Is like keep it simple. Again, like that's where I feel like
yeah,
at least in the modern age of like or at least currently to leverage AI to its maximum, I feel like having a strong understanding of the stack is super useful because this
yeah,
way I know if it goes off the rails. And so I know
yeah.
like I'm building a production ready app that, yes, I'm leaving some rough edges probably, but I know generally it's pretty stable and reasonable because I know a Laravel app and I know what it's written is at least reasonable. Whereas if I was like, hey, I'm going to do this in Go, like I have no idea. I could be leaving
Yeah.
huge open doors
Security
to stuff.
gaps,
Like
and
I
you
have
had no
no
idea.
idea, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
so I think that I'm just still leveraging the skills I have to be able to guide the AI faster and not just total vibe coding.
Hmm.
Here's some language I have no idea, and we're just going to hope it all works out. And again, I think for some apps that's even probably fine, right? But for
Yeah,
this, this is not a super security oriented app or anything, but I still want it to be secure. I still want it to be
yeah.
stable, and I'm going to charge money for things in there. So yeah, so pretty straightforward stack. I think if you said what do you imagine is the standard Laravel app stack in 2025, that is what Outro is using.
Got it. And if
Yeah.
somebody, I know we're kind of coming towards the end of time. So if somebody were excited about Outro like I am, what does it look like for them to follow development or to get to try to use it? Is there a wait list? Should they just subscribe to Mostly Technical? What are their next steps?
Yeah, they should definitely go to Mostly Technical. That's where I talk about it on a regular basis. And yeah, if you go to outro.fm, there's a link to kind of Mostly Technical there, and you can follow Mostly Technical's kind of outro page, become a member of Mostly
Yeah.
Technical. And then just as soon as I build the way to actually email the members, you will get an email and regular emails from me about the development process. So, short
Got it.
term, listen to Mostly Technical. Medium term, I will complete the ability to email the members, and then you will get emails from me about what's going on with Outro. So, that is the best way. People on the list will definitely be first into the beta and all that. So, yeah, become a member there if you're interested.
Okay. And is there anything about Outro you wish we had talked about today that we didn't get to?
Oh, geez. I mean, there's like, this is like the perfect podcast for. I mean, we have tons of like business angles and all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's a lot there. I guess, I don't know. I don't know. I just think it's interesting to, I guess it's interesting to like take a shot on something different, more of a B2C-ish type of thing. And that's different for
Yeah.
me. So I think like the push your envelope, kind of try different things if, when that's feasible, is kind of cool. And that's the part that's kind of got me excited about the whole thing and just a whole different area, not like pure generic business or dev stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, podcasting, like this is fun and vibrant and
Yeah.
people are out there. Like, I mean, just recent elections, all these things, like podcasts have played this outsized role, And so I think it's kind of cool to be working on a product in an area that's more in the mainstream sort of. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have any specific topics. I think we actually covered more than I thought we would in 45 minutes. So that was a
Well, I
good
love
job on your
that.
part
I'm a
hosting.
fast talker,
Yeah.
I did have one question that brought up to me though.
Mm.
You're talking about the idea of kind of working in a B2C world and you have historically been somebody in the bootstrapping community. For those who don't know, Ian's, former podcast was all about bootstrapping, and it was one of the premier podcasts talking about bootstrapping your business. And you also just, you spoke at places and stuff like that. And you have often been in the like, look, B2C is tough and difficult. B2B is where the money is and stuff like that. You're definitely in a different world. You're definitely stepping into something that's different, but also fun. And one of the things that at least Taylor often says when he talks about building things, he's like, look, I built the thing that I wanted, and I don't really care if anybody else ever signs up,
Right.
How would you feel if you built this whole thing and it is your dream tool and you and I are the only people who ever use it? Does that feel like a loss, or is that kind of like, whatever, it's good? Oh, I'll be there with you to the end. Are you kidding?
No, yeah. I mean, listen, that was definitely my whole mindset was like, I want this for me. I do a podcast now. I plan on podcasting into the future a long time. And so this is the tool I want. Hopefully other people will find it useful and valuable. Yeah. I'm lucky enough to be in a position where if that's the case and only me and my friends like it, then that's okay with me. Like, it's not the end of the world. I'm not going to be out on the street or anything. So yeah, so I think that's fine. If that's the way it is, then that'll be how it is. But I'm pretty optimistic on some level. I feel like the free parts, I will definitely get users. Can we make it a profitable endeavor? I feel like is a little bit different of a question. And that
still,
part,
yeah.
I'm unsure. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, if we had more time, I would pick your brain all about different pricing models and everything like that. But the good thing is, just from the first Mostly Technical episode that I listened to where you guys talked about it, I could already tell that some of that is being covered. So I will tell y'all, because I'm still catching through. If you go to Mostly Technical episode 88, that's when you really start talking about it. 88 is June 24th, 2025. So if you just start there, you're going to be going along the journey with me of learning, in retrospect, all the business decisions and thinking that Ian has kind of gone through and chatted with Aaron about as we kind of learn about this. I am very excited to go to Outro.fm and put my email address there and get notified and be one of your first users. So
awesome.
I wish we could talk more. I promise everybody I try to keep this under 45 minutes. So thank you so much for hanging out. And I look forward to more updates in the future once you get the email thing working.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. The rest of you, we will see you next time.